Okay, so we're holding Hilchos Basar Siman Tzadik Aleph, and we're doing Sif Dalet today. What we've covered so far in the beginning of the Siman was some ideas about Hadocha that may be required. Hadocha meaning a very, very superficial type of cleansing or rinsing to remove any, I guess, pirurim, any pieces that may have gotten stuck as a result of close contact between Basar and Chalav. And we said that this also applies between Heter and Isser. Hadocha is something that is a chumrah. Nevertheless, it is a requirement, even if we don't see that something may have gotten stuck. Now, the likelihood that this would happen, in other words, that something would get stuck, is if one of them is lach. It tends to pick up, whether it's from the keli itself, that may not be completely clean, or from the Isser that's next to it. If they both pieces, or if everything were to be completely yavish, there's no reason to be machmir. Nevertheless, we did go through the various dayas about what happens if Hadocha was required and you didn't do it, and you cooked it nevertheless. So since Hadocha is something so minute, or actually it removes something so minute, one daya is that it's for sure bottle. In other words, it's not even an issue. It's a non-issue because it's so little. But there are others who would be machmir, and this is based on the makor to this is the Taaruvot, the famous machlokes Rabbi Tam and the Riva. And you were supposed to take off a klipa and you did not take off a klipa, which we'll talk a little bit more about today. Tonight's sif is more relevant to this, whereas before it concerned more a hadocha b'di'evet that was not done. What was the din? And we did say, I think, that the Pri Megadim holds that the machlokes of the Riva and Rabbi Tam is also by Hadocha. In other words, it's not just by Klipa, it's also by Hadocha. Alright, so at least we know that when it comes to liquids is not something that you can easily remove a Klipa from, and therefore there are some opinions that with the liquid you can be more lenient with. With the Basar, however, you can still take off the Klipa, and you may still be required to take off the Klipa. So there were various dayas on how to handle that situation, especially concerning Hadocha. Klipa, it becomes a little bit different only because we did differentiate between a Klipa that is Medina and a Klipa that is Mechumra. There are times that a Klipa is really required Me'ikar Adin, and sometimes that it's only a Chumra. If we determine something is only a Chumra, obviously there's more leniency for it. Okay, in Seif Daled, we're going to be going into something which is more complex than just plain Hadocha. We're actually dealing with heat and cold. We're beginning to get closer to the more complicated halachas in Basar B'Chalav that involve bishul, that involve contact through heat. And when we talk about contact through heat, we know from Hilchos Taaruvot that there's various levels of heat. There's the level of tzli, roasting, where there's no liquid involved. There's a level of course, of bishul. But even in bishul, it could be that it's not yet soledas boy. It's sitting on the fire. It hasn't cooked yet. It hasn't boiled yet. It's a clear rishon, which is significant. Significant because even though you removed it from the fire after it was boiling on the fire, it still continues to be a clear rishon, which has specific dinim in Hilchos Shabbos too. Clear rishon shehiser me'al ha'esh, me'al gabei ha'esh. It continues to be a very, very hot container. The fact that it's called a clear rishon, it was once upon a time in the fire. So when it comes to heat, obviously the rules change. It's not something that you can just be makel about, but there are various scenarios with heat. And what we'll be covering in Seif Daled is not just plain mixture, is the concept of tato govar. So even though we went over it in Hilchos Taaruvot, the various concepts of tato govar, Yatzaledes, we talked about Irui, we talked about Klisheni, we encountered these concepts in Basar B'Chalav too, where we need to refresh ourselves as to what they mean. The Sugya Psachim discusses various combinations. And it is obvious that anytime you have a combination of cham letoch cham, you're in trouble. In other words, the hot piece of meat falling into hot milk falling into hot piece of meat. Both of them are hot, you're in trouble. In trouble because they are both going to become asur as a result. Not just one, but both. We're talking about hot, we're talking about yatzoledes for the most part. It has to, otherwise it's not considered hot. You have cold into cold, it's not a big problem. That is similar to what we've covered before. All that may be required would be hadacha. Even though the entire piece of meat is absorbing all this liquid milk, still it's cold. If it's cold, you may be able to wash it off, and that's it, and you're okay. Tzoyne letocham is the third possibility, where you have cold into hot. And the fourth possibility, fourth scenario, is hot into cold. Whereas hot into cold, what we will say, well, I should first go back and say, cold into hot, the cold and the hot will become completely usher, if the hot is at the bottom. Whereas the fourth scenario, where hot is falling onto cold, we will say, because of the din of tator gavar, that all that will be required is klipa. In other words, we have the top one is hot, the bottom one is cold. The bottom one is the one that's cooling off the hot, and therefore a little bit is required, but only a klipa. Whereas if the cold is falling into the hot, that's much more serious. So before we get into the svara of how the Taaruvot Gover works and why it's that way, and the various details pertaining to that halacha, we need to talk about the concept of pi'apua. Pi'apua we saw in Hilchos Taaruvot too. It is the movement of ta'am. We're concerned here with ta'am. It's the movement of ta'am between one piece to another piece, from heter to isur, or from heter to isur we're not concerned, but from isur, from heter to heter, basar and chalov, or from isur to heter. And this could happen in various ways. When you have hot milk in a pot, and you have a hot piece of meat falling in, so what do we say? The pi'apua, the way the pi'apua works here, the way the movement of the time works, is that the entire thickness of the meat that is falling in is absorbing the liquid. This is a form of bishul, because what you have here is a hot liquid that's being absorbed into the entire chaticha. And because it's hot liquid, I'm emphasizing liquid, the nature of it is to be absorbed completely into the chaticha that is falling into it. So this is a form, so this hot in the bottom, cold falling into it, is a form of bishul, because the heat of the bottom basically is mefapea, if you want to use that word, or the liquid is mefapea. That which is hot is being moved or being absorbed into the piece of meat that's falling into it. But if there is no liquid, just that the two are hot, let's say cheese and meat, both of them are hot, then that is similar to tzli. And in tzli, when it comes to roasting, we learned in Hilchos Taaruvot that since there's no liquid in between the two, so it's not a bishul. If it's not a bishul, then the whole thing does not mefapea through and through. All it could be mefapea is kedei netila. Now, before we say kedei netila, we must remember that when it comes to tzli, we made it a very important distinction between kochush and shaman. It all depends what you're dealing with. Even though they're sitting next to each other, they're both hot, and there's no liquid to be mefapea in the whole piece. One sitting next to each other, 2 hot dogs, 2 hamburgers, 1 tray, 1 kosher. No liquid. There's going to be pi'apua, and the pi'apua is going to be like this. If the iser is shaman, or some say even the heter, if one of them is shaman, at least, you're going to have the ability of transferring the tam of the iser into the heter completely. Not just a little bit, not just superficially, completely. If it's kochush, if it's lean, I guess that's the way we call it in English, lean, it's not fat, then it's not mefapea so much, it's only kedei netila. Now, comes along the Ramah, in Siman Kuf Hey, in Hilchos Taaruvot, says, guess what? We're not beki in these. We just don't know. We don't know between kochush and shaman. We don't know the difference. We can't always tell the difference between what is considered fat, and let's therefore be machmer and aser everything, regardless of whether you think it's kochush or shaman. Okay, so far, what do we see? That depending on the circumstances, there's heat. Yeah, but depending on if you have solids or if you have liquids, if you have one on top of the other, and so forth, it can make a difference of whether the whole thing becomes aser or whether it just becomes aser kedei klipa or kedei netila. Now, a very interesting detail regarding pi'apua. important detail, which I think we discussed in Halacha Taaruvot too. If you have a chaticha of heter, it's heter. The problem is it was boilea iser. So this is not what we would call an iser machmas atzmo. In itself is treif. It is a heter that was boilea iser. And after it was boilea iser, it fell into a pot while it was hot. It fell into a heter that was also hot. So they're both hot. Here, the heter does not become aser. The heter that is heter. You have heter that was boilea.
Yeah, so
and
both,
iser.
both the one in the pot as well.
No. The one that boilea and iser is aser. Okay, but it's a heter that was boilea iser.
Right.
And it fell as hot piece on another hot piece. Right. Here we don't say that the one in the bottom, even though they're both hot, will be aser, because the one that's falling on him that is hot has a belia that is aser. And because it's only a belia, not a iser machmas atzma, we learned a klal that the belua cannot travel from one piece to another piece without the medium of liquid. If it's an iser machmas atzma, it is aser in itself, it's treif. Okay, then you have kedei netila at the very least. They're both hot. There's no liquid. Fine, they're touching. But if this piece of hot heter that is boilea iser, the whole thing, the whole reason why it's also because it has a belia, that belia will not travel to the next piece, even though both of them are hot, if there's no medium of liquid in between them. However, we did say that if the iser bolua is shaman, it can go from chaticha to chaticha without roitiv.
There has to be the
Yeah.
So the piece that...
No, apparently not, because
So
here,
the-
what's
so
in? What's in?
The
Go ahead.
absorption does come fatty by meeting a piece automatically?
If the iser the balua is shaman,
No, let's say it was lean, but the
heter?
piece that is bolea is shaman.
It doesn't appear. I remember we discussed this. I don't think so. I think that the ikar chumra was on the iser balua much more than on the heter. See, when heter is shaman and you have iser, then it doesn't make that much of a difference. Heter shaman, iser shaman, one of them is shaman, but it's machmas atzmo is shaman. When the heter is shaman, to take out the belia, I don't believe everybody would say that we're a machmer in the case. But the other way around, when the iser is shaman, I think so. I can't remember all the tzdadim here, but at least here in this case, what the post can write, that if the iser balua is an iser balua shaman, it can be mefapea, even without rotiv. They both are very hot.
My question was only, does the iser...
No. In other words, the iser balua becoming shaman as a result of being close? No.
Not close.
Yeah. You're just saying because the heter... No, you're just saying because the heter is shaman...
The one that is absorbing the iser.
Right. Will it absorb anyway the iser balua because it in itself is a shaman?
No, the heter that was absorbing
Right.
was shaman.
Right.
The iser, as it travels through this heter, through the...
So that's what the question we're saying. Apparently there is a difference between which one is shaman here.
Now, if the iser is shaman, it's here.
Yeah, the other way around I did not
Or the
see.
heter.
I don't recall.
The heter that is bolea
Yeah,
the iser.
exactly. We would have to go back there and see what the post can write about that scenario. The other way around was clear here, that if the iser balua, even though it's balua, it in itself is shaman, it somehow has the ability to travel. Or at least we would be machmer. Now the question here is, why don't you say, in the case of iser balua, say the same cloud? We're not bekin between shaman and non-shaman. Here, we're not so machmer to say we're not bekin. It's an iser balua. We're not going to say, oh, let's machmer. I don't know if that balua is lean or fat. So let's just say it's aser. No. If it's an iser balua, we're not going to make that,
We're expert in...
say that we're not expert. We're expert enough. The other way around, if you have a real shtickle treif piece of meat, and you're not sure if it's lean or fat, we're going to be machmer, according to the Ramah. Right? But if the iser is an iser balua, and we said it can make a difference if that balua is shaman or not, in this case we're going to say that we possibly can determine that. We're not going to be so machmer to say we're not bekiyim, and therefore let's make everything that is an iser balua be treated like an iser shaman.
In other words, because of the leniency of balua, the standards of that is required to distinction is
Right,
lower.
it's lower, yeah. Which is interesting. I thought that was interesting. Yeah. Which is, by the way, the reason why the Ashkenazim don't eat the chelek ha'achori, the animal, the back, because they're not keen today in removing the gid hanoshe. It requires a lot of the sciatic nerve. It requires a lot of work, and not everybody's a boki how to do it. It's time consuming, and they said, well, we won't eat the back. That's too bad because you can't have filet mignon unless. Yeah, and you know why the back of the animal is softer than the front? The front is busy with muscles working all the time, moving around. The back doesn't move as much as the front. Yeah. So yeah, that's the reason. So the back is softer. It's better in some ways than the front. Not as muscular. But you would have to go to Israel, you have to go to Mexico where they have mumchim for gid hanoshe.
But they have it also in New York versus...
Could be, yeah, sure, it could be.
And ashgacha on that.
Well, if it's a good ashgacha, there shouldn't be a problem.
Even though
We don't not eat it because we say it's usher. We don't eat it because we don't know. If somebody came along and said it's, I'll do it. He cannot do it lechatchila for the Ashkenazi community, but he can do it for himself. The question is, you eat by him. Well,
even though we don't have a Masorah on how to...
No, we do have a Masorah. No, we do have a Masorah.
I'm not sure.
No, we do.
We haven't done it for...
No, we do. They have always been experts because there have been instances where they had to do it.
Is it actually an eating, or is it the minhag is by the
not to do it?
The slaughterers don't sell it.
Don't sell it. Don't buy it. Exactly. That's what it is.
It's not an isser.
It's not an isser. So
if it's available, it's a kosher.
And it's a real good ashgacha. The guy really knows. He's an expert. Yeah. You know what it's like? There's another interesting. We just read Parshas Shmini about birds, about animals, about fish, and about locust. Right?
Yeah.
If you see an animal that has split hooves and chews its cud, according to most poskim, you can eat it. It's kosher. Those are the simanim from the Torah. You never saw a zebu. You never saw a bison. You never saw a water buffalo. It's kosher, according to most. Some would say, no. There's a shach that says that. It could be a problem. I'll tell you why in a minute. But when it comes to birds, it's clear in the halacha that you have to have a Masorah. You have to have a tradition because it's a little bit more complicated. The Torah doesn't give us a siman in Torah shebechsav. The Torah shebal peh gives us the simanim, the three simanim of etzba yesera. Besides the 3 forefingers, you have a back finger, like you saw in the chicken. You have a zefek, a crop, C-R-O-P, which is a place where it stores the food temporarily. Then it has to have a gizzard, which you are able to peel off. The inside there's a layer that you can peel. So if it has these 3, supposedly it's most likely a clean bird. Now there are times where you can't tell these things. Well, what if you just see the zekfek and you see the esba yesera, you don't see the kurkava, you're not sure? They tell you, well, see who he hangs out with.
Right.
And as long as it's not a bird of prey, it's okay. But if you see esba yesera, you see a zefek and a kurkava, and you see it's a bird of prey, you're not going to eat it. So because it's a little bit somewhat vague, more not as clear as split hoof and chew its cud, we need a Masorah. So when Jews first came to this country and they saw turkey, they weren't sure if they were allowed to eat it. Until a community in the world said, we always used to eat turkey. So we were relying on the Masorah of that community in India. Yeah. And there was another country, I think, who also had it. So, okay. So just because we haven't had giraffe doesn't mean you can't have it. The problem with giraffe, it's $1,000 a kilo.
You don't know, where do you do it?
That's the easiest animal to make shechita. You have a 6-foot konen veshet. You can't miss. You can't miss. But you need a ladder, and you need some strong guys to hold it, and you need a lot of money. It's going to cost you per pound. Who knows? Yeah, that's the only reason. It's wild. It's a wild animal, so it's going to taste probably wild.
It's got a wild taste.
It's got a wild taste. Yeah. So it's not a common animal. So they didn't have it. But there would be no problem. It chews its cud, it's malagera. Now, can you have, let's say you only know that this animal is malagera, but you don't know if it has split hooves. As long as you can recognize a camel, a shofan, and our nevis, and you say this is not one of them, you can have it because there's only 3 the Torah says that has 3 simonim. That are, in other words, there are only 3 animals that have that are malagera and are not kosher. There is one animal that has split hooves and it's not malagera, and that's the pig. So if you see something that has split hooves and you're not sure if it's malagera, as long as you can recognize a pig, which includes, by the way, the babirusa and includes the boar and all the family, right? As long as you recognize that this is not it, you see this is a gazelle. You heard the latest machlokes now? And the latest machlokes between some poskim is what do we do with an elk? What's wrong with the elk? Even though this is not Basar בחלב, it's fascinating. An elk presents a little bit of a problem. The Torah tells us two simanim, right? The Chachamim say there's additional identifying simanim of a kosher animal. Besides these two, one of the most important one is that every pure, clean animal has only teeth on the lower jaw, no teeth on the upper jaw. That is why it needs to chew its cud. It does not have the ability to masticate, to chew. The first time around, he grabs the food. It doesn't have teeth up. Go to the cow. I don't recommend you put your hands in its mouth because it's the bite, even without the teeth, is pretty strong. But there's no teeth on the upper jaw, only in the lower jaw. Okay, this is true with all kosher animals. Comes along an elk. Hi, look at me. What's with an elk? What would we say with an elk by looking from far? Well, it has horns, kosher, clean animal type of horns. It has split hooves. It chews its cud. Great! No, but it has two canine teeth, if you know what canines are. Small, different kinds of canines, but two nevertheless canine teeth in its upper jaw. One on this side, one on this side. Oh no, what do we do now? It's not supposed to have any teeth. So some poskim say, it's treif! It's not supposed to... Yeah, well, tameh. Yeah, you're right. Tameh. So it's not a clean animal. The consensus appears to be, in its logical common sense, that semen of teeth should not be the determining factor. First of all, it's only two. It's not a whole bunch of teeth. That's number one. It's called nivim in the Lashon of the Gemara. Nivim. And why it has it, we don't know. But it has two, and they're very, very interesting. Nivim. Very different than in the rest of the teeth. Should that disqualify the other two simanim? No, mapitom. The only two simanim that the Torah gives us, the Torah Shebechsav, is chew its cud and split hoofs. And if we see that, that should be enough.
There's also, if I remember this in the Gemara, what is the no?
I don't remember right now. What's the purpose?
Yeah, in other words, are these additional phenomena, additional requirements, or this?
No, the Gemara asks about fish. The Gemara says like this: a kosher fish has scales and fins, and the Gemara says any fish that have scales have fins. Not all fish that have fins have scales. So the Gemara says, wait, if all fish that have scales have fins, then why should the Torah mention fins? Just mention scales. Who needs to know the siman of fins? The Gemara answers, Yagdil Torah v'yadir. Let us see from this how the Chochmah of the Bria, the Chochmah Hashem, that the Torah is min hashamayim, is that the Torah knew about these things. Let people be aware of that by pointing out that the Torah knew the simonim. There's no need to mention snapirim, fins. But here, Moshe was not a zoologist. Moshe did not travel all over the world. And how could he say there's only 4 animals in the world that have one siman, not the other? That's what he's saying. There's only 4. And they've been looking around for a 5th, they haven't found one yet. So why mention fins if you can mention scales? Yagdil Torah v'yadir. But anyway, when it comes to birds, you need a masoros. When it comes to locust, today Ashkenazim don't eat locust. Why not? Because they don't like to eat deep-fried food. And and usually locust is eaten deep-fried. I'll tell you how they do it. They take off the wings and they take off the head, and it's like popcorn. Falafel, deep-fried. Some Moroccans and Yemenites eat it. They know which ones are kosher. If you look at the Torah, you have clear simanim. The simanim are 2 back legs to jump, karsulaim, 4 regular legs, 4 wings that cover most of its body. And it has to be one of the 4 types, either the sol'am, the chargol, the chagav, the arbe. It has to be one of those 4. So in Morocco and in Teman, and maybe in other countries over the years, they knew. They remembered that they knew, and they would eat them.
Yeah, they had a special thing on them.
In the back, one of them has like a ches. Yeah. So they can eat it, we don't eat it. We today don't eat.
But the family magazine, I think it was like special eating things where they have different, strange and unusual.
Oh, that.
So they have.
Yeah, I remember.
So they did eat this.
Yeah. Some of them maybe ate because they were relying, like we said before, on the Masorah of him.
So why don't we eat it? Turkey based upon what they eat in India.
Supposedly we can. In other words, if we can determine with certainty that Masorah is reliable, and he invites you over and says, it's kosher, we would be able to eat it. But we on our own don't have the Masorah, so we don't eat. So that's a good example of where we could possibly rely on the Masorah of someone else, just like with the birds. Yes, just that today, no chocolate-covered ants, no cockroaches, but locusts, yes. That's the only one you can have, the kosher
They
ones.
actually have a cockroach.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, so we were talking about how do we get into this? We were talking about being bucky. There are times that the Ramah says that, including the famous kapela. He doesn't want to use a kapela, for other reasons. In the Sephardim, the B'Yosef Machabed. Okay. All right. The next din is about the Torah Gover. So maybe we'll read Sif Daled, and then we'll go into it. Sif Daled. Basar v'cholav roischin shenisarvu yachad. So the two are hot. The basar and the cholav, the milk, are both boiling hot. They got mixed up. V'afilu basar tzoinen letoch cholav roiseach. Whether it's the meat is cold, it's falling into a hot milk, or cholav tzoinen, or the milk is cold, falling into letoch basar roiseach, into hot meat. These examples of cold into hot are called asur. Cold meaning both the meat and the milk. So if the bottom one is hot, very hot, the top one is cold, it's going to make everything asur. The hot one and the cold one. Why? Mishum the tator gover. We say, you apply the concept of tator gover, even though cold is falling on top of it. Cold. Maybe it will cool it off. No, it's not going to cool it off. As we will explain, there's more koach in the one that's in the bottom.
How does the volume?
Oh, the Valdic question. That's what we'll talk about there. That's a good one. Aval cholav roseach, but hot milk, shenofel al basar tzoinen, that falls into cold meat, or basar roseach shenofel at cholav tzoinen. So we're having the opposite scenario, or the hot meat falling into cold milk. That will require klipa. Koilef habasar, you remove a klipa of the basar that fell into the milk. B'shar basar mutter, the rest of the basar is mutter. Now, what about the cholav? I'm going to come back to the Ramon in a moment. The cholav mutter kuloi. No klipa. Wow. Just like Rabbeinu Tam. The cholav is entirely mutter. In this case, where it was the one that's on the bottom, and it was the one that was cold. Whereas the one that's falling in is the one that's hot. If they're both cold, mediach habasar and mutter, then all you got to do is rinse the basar, and you're okay. As we said before, if things are cold, hadacha is sufficient. Going back to what was said before, in parentheses, if anytime we say the basar in this case needs klipa, im lo kol fuhu, if you did not peel it off, ubishlo, and you cooked it, kach mutter bedi eved. So this is a little bit similar to what we discussed before, and we will elaborate a little bit more now, that if you were supposed to take off a klipa on the basar and you did not, and you went ahead and cooked it, it's okay, it's mutter b'di'ev. Okay, so what's the tator gover? What's this idea of the tator gover? The one that's sitting at the bottom has a certain koach. A koach that the top one does not have. And we're saying that when we say tator gover, we're saying even if the bottom one is cold. In other words, the fact that it's sitting at the bottom presents a unique situation, whereas it is the determining factor of whether what is falling into it will be asur, completely asur kedeklipa, or not asur at all. So what is the reason for tator gover? So in the Isra Veheter and Ramon in Torah's Chatos they write very simply that the basic idea behind tator gover is that the nature of heat is to rise. We know that. Now they wrote that about heat. The nature of heat is okay, but what if the bottom one is cold? Well, so in other words, they didn't really talk about that scenario. They just gave the example of why, when the bottom one is hot, does it make the whole thing cold, the whole thing asur. They didn't so much talk about if the bottom one is cold, because that Gemara pretty much will tell us the reason. That's only asur of a klipa, and that is easier to understand. But when the bottom one is hot, the one that's falling on it is cold, the reason why everything becomes asur is because of tator gover, is because the nature of heat is to rise.
Because that's when the bottom one is hot.
It's cold, yeah. So the nature of heat is to rise, and because of that, it is so strong that it makes everything asur. Okay. The Rashba writes another idea. He says, the one that's in the bottom has an advantage over the one that's on top. The one that's in the bottom is sitting there. It's stationary. It doesn't move. The one that's on top is coming to it. So somehow, the one that's stationary is stronger than the one that's traveling. That's all he says. Now, the question regarding quantity. Before we get into quantity, the Taz here brings down like this. Brings down the Torah's Chatos, that when do we say Tator Govar? That the bottom, let's say the bottom one is an Isser, okay? Well, it doesn't have to be an Isser. Let's say it's
doesn't matter which one is it.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference, right? But let's say the bottom one is an Isser Machmas Atzmoy. There's no problem. It's Isser, it's also Machmas Atzmoy, it's a real Isser, it's Tator Govar, it will make the one that's falling into it completely Isser.
Which one?
What? The one that's in the bottom.
Oh, the bottom.
Yeah. We're talking about that it's all going to be Asr. It's all going to be Asr as a result of the din of Tatar Govar. In this case, being that the bottom is hot, and the whole thing becomes Asr. The whole, both would become Asr if we would be dealing with Basar bechalv. But in the case of not Basar bechalv, where the bottom one is treif, and it's hot, and a heter falls into it, Tatar Govar, if it's Asr machmas atzmai, everything is, the top one is also.
Would it be any different if the top one is a treif machmas atzmo? Would that make a difference?
No.
See?
Yeah, if the
so
bottom.
I don't need to know which one of them is treif. As long as one
That's
of
true.
them is an isser.
That's right. As long as the bottom one is hot.
That's
Yeah,
what determines
right. That's what the bottom exactly. Yeah, you're right. The one that's in the bottom, as long as the one that's in the bottom is hot, right? But what the Taz is bringing out now is that if the one that's in the bottom is not Asur Machmasat, let's say that it happens to be the one that's Asur, the one that's in the bottom. If it's not Isur Machmas Atzma, remember before we made an interesting distinction between Isur Machmas Atzma versus Isur Balua, that an Isur Balua does not travel without any liquids. If it's touching, if it's sitting next to it, there's no liquid, it's not an Isur Machmas Atzma, it's an Isur Balua in it. So we said unless the Isur Balua is Shomen, the Isur Balua is not Mefapea. It can't travel. When it's all in liquid in a pot, everything gets mixed up, yes. The stuff that's absorbed here will travel, will go everywhere. But if it's not, if there's no liquid involved, that just two of them are very hot, or one of them is cold sitting on the one that's hot, and it's an Isur Balua, then the Isur Balua cannot travel without liquid. That was one din we discussed about the Isur Balua. Here comes the second din of Isur Balua, that the Taz brings down that even though we say Tator Govar, if the one that's in the bottom, let's say, is an Isur, then the one on top will become Asur. That's only if it's Asur Machmas Atzmoi. If it's an Isur Balua, it will not go out without Roitev. So we have a similar din here of Isur Balua, and a similar din here, there's no Roitev, but here we're applying the din of Tator Govar. We want to apply it, and we'll say it won't work. It won't work because it's not a piece of Isur. It's an Isur Balua in the Tator. The Isur Balua in the Tator, I'm sorry. There's not enough koach for that Isur Balua to impact the heter. If there's no roitev, there's no liquid here. See, so same idea as we said before, but here we're applying it with Tator Govar. Tator Govar, as strong as it is, and is strong, you don't need liquid for it to impact the heter. The bottom one is hot, even if it's the heter, right? But if the one that's in the bottom is hot and it has an Isur Balua, then even though it's in the bottom, Tator Govar, it won't affect it. It won't.
I don't recall a parallel case.
Yes.
We have a header that is hot, that contains it contains, and we have next to it, not flying through here,
right,
sitting next to it, touching it,
right,
a header,
right,
that is hot.
In Taaruvot we learned that,
right.
Mm-hmm.
So would the Isser Balua in the hot header affect header, the hot header that has no Isser Balua? We have no water.
No.
Dry and dry.
No.
So why would it be any different if the one or the other?
No. Remember, in Hilchos Taaruvos we did have, I think it's the Ramah. It's the Ramah that says what happens if the two of them are sitting next to each other, side by side, not one on top of the other.
And we're talking about one is
Isser, one is heter.
No, one has an Isser Balua.
No, one second, before
okay.
Isser Balua. Just a regular case. So he says both of them are Asr. Both of them are Asr, meaning if you have Basar and Bechalav, if they were next to each other, in the event you have Basar and Bechalav, they would both be Asr. Because I'm using that case for our purposes. Here we're learning Basar b'chalav.
No, we're talking
So
about not Isser Balua.
Right, no. Before we get to the Isser Balua, I'm using the Ramah in Hilchos Taaruvot that says that if you have Isser v'heter close to each other without roitev, not on top of each other, not cooked with each other, what's the din? He said if they're yoish, what was the lashon over there? If they're next to each other, right? So he says, if both of them are hot mikli rishon, the heter is aser completely. He says, completely, which is interesting. Okay, it's not even tatar gavar. Next to each other is right. He says, what if one of them is cold, right? So he says like this: if the heter is the one that's cold, the heter requires a klipa.
But how does the Ramah say that?
Basar b'chalav, they both would require a klipa.
But how does Ramah say that the heter is aser?
Right. Because he considers that close to tatar gavar. Yeah.
I want to stay away for a second from the tatar gavar.
Right.
Because tatar gavar is a derived law and not a law.
Yeah. Imenicham, here's the language of the Ramah. Kuf hey. See, imenicham ze etzel ze. Im shneim chamim yichoim kli rishon. They both have hakol osor. Okay. There is a shot that brings the marshal about a dover gush being always like a clear rishon. Maybe that's why he was more machmir.
But so why do I need the water in the pot?
No, that enables even the Isser Balua to travel.
No, forget Isser Balua.
Yeah.
Complicating matters.
Yeah.
I have two things in a pot.
Right.
And they're not sleep. I'm
Right.
roasting them.
Right.
So that makes the heter. I have an Isser and a heter that are being roasted.
Right.
That makes the heter Isser.
Yes. If it's sitting on it, because it's a tall gover.
They're both in the pot. I don't need right now to talk about it. Tatar gavar is only a question of
Right. They're both hot.
temperature.
Yes.
Because that's what I'm saying. It's a derived. It's a tatar gavar. Tatar gavar only determines whether I treat it as a hot
Yes.
mixture or a cold mixture.
Right.
Tatar gavar does not establish a new. Tatar gavar only tells me whether I treat a mixture that contains one cold and one hot piece as a cold or a hot mixture.
Right.
But the laws that apply are either a hot mixture or a mixture. That's why I'm going back to the original.
Let me see here. Let me go back to the Halacha in Taaruvot and see the. Yeah, in other words, basically you want to know the difference between sli, no? Yeah.
Sli and cooking.
Yeah.
So right now we have established that the Ramah bites sli. If we have an isser and a heter and they're roasting together and touching each other, they have to be touching each other.
Right.
Then the heter will become.
Right.
What if the two are roasting, but the isser is an isser balu? I have a heter together with a heter roasting, but the second heter is an isser balu.
So we said no.
Still the same thing.
No, we said no. There's a difference between Isser Balua and Isser Masatzma.
So if a heter roasting together with a heter with isser balua
Right.
does not answer the complete heter that has no isser balua.
Right.
So the chayra, if a warm heter with balua is at the bottom and a cold heter falls on top of it,
Right.
it's either.
Right. They're very similar.
No, because the tatagavar does not introduce. The tatagavar simply tells me if I have a mixture of cold and hot,
Right.
one at the bottom, one at the
But
top.
the bottom is stronger.
Is this mixture subject to the rules of a hot or a cold mixture?
Yes. Yeah.
It just decides which of the two applies, cold or hot.
Yes.
I have one hot, one cold. What do I do now? Do I treat it like it's two cold things, like it's two hot things?
Right.
So it tells me the temperature
tells
of the
me-
bottom one determines which rules apply.
Yes.
That's a hot mixture or a
Right.
cold
So
mixture.
you're right. You're
Doesn't
right. So
introduce
that
new
would be
rules.
similar to tzli. Is that
That's
what you're
what I'm
saying?
saying.
Yes. Apparently. Yes. Very similar. Yes. Just that we need you would have to explain why by tzli it's only kedei netila, and here it's iser kuloi.
So you're saying if I don't have water involved,
Right. There's no water involved in either of the cases. Okay.
so who answers it kulo? Who answers it the tas?
Yeah.
The Ramar asks it kulu by Tata Gavar with the balua?
No, no. With the Isur Balua, there's no problem.
I understand the word no problem.
In other words, Isur Balua, that's what we said before, is limited. Because there's no water involved, there's no liquid involved, so it's not a bishul, so it does not go so far as to impacting in a Tatogover situation, the one that's sitting on top of it. It just doesn't go. It doesn't go.
So the heter that has the Isur Balua is hot, and the cold heter falls on top of it.
Right.
And because the Isur is Balua, so therefore the heter will not become only maybe Kiddig, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what we will see. We will see. We didn't get into too much yet. Yeah. But anyway, apparently, and we will see that there is a difference between liquid and solids and two solids. Because that's where tzli comes into play. Otherwise, what's the difference? So here, our scenario is talking about liquid into solid or solid into liquid, where there is a certain absorption. Where Tato Govar obviously is going to make a difference. If the bottom one is meat and the top is milk, the milk is going to become usr. The bottom one is milk and it's very, very hot, and if the cold meat falls in, somehow it's also going to make both of them usr. Even though it's cold, the bottom one being hot has more koach than the one that's on top to cool it off. And that's where we need to see the question, a very important question here as far as quantities. But before we get to quantities, just wanted to get that out of the way, that if it's an Isur Balua, it will not come out without roitiv. Rabbi Kiva Eger, Asar, Chavas Das, and others hold that even if it's an Isur Balua at the bottom, it's going to somehow, when you have roitiv, when you have liquid, that's where it's going to make a difference. It's going to heat the liquid, and it's going to draw out. It's liquid.
So they're cooking together?
Right, so that's what they say, that it's, they don't agree with the Taz, I think, or with the other shitas that hold that Isur Balua would not qualify here. In other words, even if it's an Isur Balua, it would be a problem.
But that's if we have...
Yeah, with liquids involved, to be poilet and mavliya. That's what the liquid is really doing here. Apparently, yeah. Whereas if the two pieces are, as we said before, are next to each other, it's a little bit different. Even though the Ramah said that when they're both hot, mikli rishon, we have to understand that they're aser. In other words, it's more than just sli when they're next to each other. I have to look into that again, what the difference is. Why the Ramah over there was machmir when they're both hot mikli rishon, that they both in other words, that the heter would be completely aser. If one of them is tzoinen, he says, if it's the heter that's tzoinen, which is interesting, if it's the heter that's tzoinen, then it requires a klipa.
So, but we're still talking about the case of the Isur Balua.
No, forget about this. Just an Isur b'fnei atzmo, yeah. Right? So we have to understand why that's more chomer. That's what the Ramah says.
So maybe the Ramah is saying that because we don't distinguish, because we... If the Isur was... It
could be that it has that it's subsequent to that fact. That since we're not mechalek between
lean and fatty,
it could be.
And in the case of fatty, everyone would agree you don't need the liquid. The fatty makes
yes, it could be. It could be. Yeah, I would have to double check the halacha there. All right. Let's go into the Gemara for a minute.
You did mention earlier on that the Isur was balua. It's not fatty, and the heter that's bolea is fatty. Then it will not be rapea.
Necessarily right. In other words, we saw, and I have to double check that too.
Is that also?
I remember there was a chiluk between what exactly is fatty here. The heter is, because if the heter is fatty and we have heter and isur next to each other, it may not make a difference whether the heter is the one that's fat, because the fat travels there, it travels back.
Exactly.
But but what about if the Isur Balua is fatty? So that's what we're saying.
No, we're saying it's not fatty, but then it was...
Exactly, I'm sorry, right. When the Isur Balua is not fatty for a fact, but the heter, then it's not strong enough to get out the Isur Balua.
So maybe that has
I think that was the chiluk of it. They have to double check that too.
So with the fact that something that Balua cannot asur...
Then where it could travel. It has to do with that cloud. Then itself.
The cloud, right?
Yes. It has to do with that cloud.
Right. Yeah.
It can only go so far.
In other words, the heter that has a property that would make it more effective if it wasn't Isser does not supply these properties to the Isser that was Balua in it. We had the salt that was Balua.
Right.
Even though it's spicy or whatever, and therefore
Yeah, I'm almost sure it has to do with that cloud. That cloud definitely.
What was it called? I forget
Yeah.
what it's called.
Yeah, you cannot go where the other one cannot go.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Let's just a quick Gemara as far as Tatar Gava. So the Gemara mentions that Tatar, when you're having the situation of Tatar Gava, I call it the opposite Tatar Gava, where the one that's hot is at the top and the one that's cold is in the bottom. What do you call it in physics? The other side. In other words, assume the regular din is that the hot is at the bottom. So what would you call the din where the hot is on the top? It is the other side of the coin. Whatever.
Inverse.
The inverse. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. The inverse, where the one that's hot is on the top. What does that produce? What exactly happens physically? So Gemara uses a language to describe the fact why this is a problem. Is ademeka lebola. As it's coming down, it's weighing down at the bottom. It has the effect of absorbing in it and in the chalav itself. In other words, because of the weight, as it's coming down, it does do something. How much? Kedei klipa.
That's rabbinical.
But exactly, it's rabbinical. That's a very important point. The Isra Beheta points out that this din of ademeke lebola is only midrabanan. It's not in the Torah.
And it's a bias, but you can't tell me that it'll do a little something.
Exactly, you remember that, right? Yeah. It's going to do something, right? But that din is a derabbanan, exactly. Now, in Basar bechalov, we're machmer legabi blias and plitas. But if that's all you have is a small blia or plita, it's not going to be osur behano. In other words, in Basar bechalov, even though it's a derabbanan, this thing, we were only machmer legabi the blia and the plita. That it would be asur. It would asur the food. But not legabi isur hanoah. So therefore, getting back to the machlokes of Rabbi Elyahu and the Rivo, when you have hot meat falling into cold milk, Rivo was still machmer and required shishim in the cholav to be vatal the isur, whereas Rabbi Elyahu said the cholav never became osur to begin with. This is based on the fact that this whole thing is a rabbanon.
The Riva was
no one who is machmer, just like the top one needs a klipa, the basar, so does the cholav. Or you would need shishim.
So the chalav needs itself to have 60 against whatever surface area of the chalav touches.
That's
the
right.
basar.
Yes, and Rabbi Elyahu says no, it's not a problem. And that's how the Shuchan Aruch paskins. Now, what would be the reason why the ones who say you don't need shishim? I mean, what would be the reason? So there's a Taz here that explains this. It brings down the Isra Beheter, that the whole idea of a klipa in the basar is a chumrah, lechatchila. Therefore, if that ability to take off a klipa does not exist, there's no isra. That's the pashut pshat. That's the way he explains it. Since the whole thing is a chumrah lechatchila, if it's not possible, it's not a problem. The marshal paskins like the rivo, and because the Taz, the same Taz who brings down the marshal who paskins like the rivo, the Taz says that then you know what, marshal was machmer. Let's be machmer like the rivo. That's what the Taz says. And the Shach appears to be saying the same thing. He's not Mako. In other words, b'di'eved. We're talking about the situation b'di'eved if a klipa really is required, we're not talking about baradocha anymore. Remember, we talked already about baradocha. We're talking about klipa. They seem to be wanting to be machmer. And the only ones that I saw that were actually Mako from the Achroinim, it was in the Hefset Meruba situation. Let me see here, the Primegodim, the Chochmasodim, right, only to be Mekel and Hefset Meruba if by the Eved you did not take off a klipa or figure out shishim against the klipa. Now, Chazon Ish says like this: Legabe the Gemara that says I efshe de lo bola pursa. That's what the Gemara says. When you have hot falling on cold, it's not possible that it didn't absorb even a little bit. The Chazon Ish explains from that Gemara you understand from the word pursa is just a little bit. The Gemara says it for sure absorbed a little bit. Yeah, but that little bit, the Chazon Ish says, would for sure be bottle. There's always shishim kenegdoi. Interesting point. So why are you machmer by basar then? If it's such a little bit about, because by basar they actually gave a shear of klipa which is actually removable. You could take it off. There is no other amount less than a klipa. So since they gave a shear, and that shear is possible to remove, you remove it. That's all he says. There's no other shear. Right? But by Dover Lach, they weren't machmer to take off the klipa. Since this whole thing is midrabanan anyway. All right, just quickly into the Ramah. The Ramah, as far as the Ramah is saying that b'di'evet it's okay.
By the way, that they're saying the shach is aser klipa of the basar.
Yeah, but if you look at the Nekudas HaKesef, I think I saw the Nekudas HaKesef.
Whereas
Look at the Nekudas HaKesef. Nekudas HaKesef talks about all the questions that were presented in the Taz, I think.
The mind halacha the mind is in here that we don't require it. It's but
Ayin Sham. Anyway, I think I'm almost sure somewhere, not, I don't know, if not in the Kusa, then in the Shach, that he appears to be not Neko. But anyway, so
maybe
what,
there he's talking about the klipa of the bus.
you have to check it. Maybe you're right, yeah. Because he's talking about the whole thing.
Yeah, but he's talking about the klipa of the bus and have 60 in the middle.
I think he speaks about it before. I have to check again. Yeah. All right, but anyway, not everybody's Mekel here. I mean, a lot. Some passing like Rabbi Tam very clearly, Machaber. But some are Machaber. At least they have to be Ruben it's mutter. We know. All right. As far as the Ramah saying that if you got cooked with the evidence mutter, there is a machlokes legabe why the Ramah says that. In other words, where does he take it from? Yeah. This is a very interesting. There's a very interesting machlokes. This is based on the Magen Avram, I think. I think that it's the Magen Avram that says that the kavanah of the Ramah. Listen, very interesting point here. The kavanah of the Ramah is not that it's just okay and forget about it. He says that if the basar, like you were saying, Ilan, got cooked b'di'evad, because the Ramah says b'mokum shabbasar tzorich klipa im lo kulfu bishlo kach motor. You got the basar at least now. It doesn't mean that the Ramah is saying, just forget about it. He's saying the food is okay, but the basar, when you take it out now of the dish, the food, go ahead and make the klipa now after you cooked it.
Because you can still do it.
You can still do it. Interesting Magen Avram.
The klipa did not answer the
rest
food,
of it,
but
yeah.
the klipa itself you should bring out because you can still.
Yeah, the main thing is that the klipa here does not answer everything else that got cooked in it. That's what the Magen Avram says.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Why should not?
And the reason for that is because chamle toch tzoinen is only a chumrah. Masha'inken, if it was is necessary mi'ikar like by Melicha, right? That would be different. According to the Isser Veheter, you have to take klipa after the bishul. Why? Because he holds that by the cooking it already spread out, the klipa. Yeah. In other words, that you have to take it off anyway.
Although it's spread out.
Now, yeah, so what's interesting, so they ask, but wait a minute, usually we say Efshel Esoichto is Asur, right? Even usually Efshel Esoichto is Asur, meaning that in other words, we don't say that it went anywhere, right? Here, we say it's okay. We'll fit it over here. It's only a chumrah. Yeah. Since here it's only a chumrah, it's okay. In other words, even though it got spread out, as he says, it's spread out, it may be a problem, we're not machmir. All right. I mean, that's just an additional detail. I don't know how much that's pertinent here. The main thing is that the basar here, according to some, would require klipa even afterwards, and some say it's even okay the way it is right now. Okay, and now to the last point that we began to discuss before about quantities. I think this is a very interesting area. This area of quantities in the Torah Gova covers Hilchos Shabbos too.
Incidentally, since you just mentioned Hilchos Shabbos,
Yeah.
if I see it correctly, if something hot falls onto some cold.
Well, you have to be very. I'll discuss it. We have to be careful there again. So where it works like this. Poshup shot in the poiskim. If you just look around, you will see that it does not make a difference quantities. They don't mention it. They don't mention it. The Gemara doesn't distinguish between lots or little, and therefore, even if you have a lot of hot coming down on a little bit of cold, or a lot of cold coming down on a little bit of hot, it doesn't appear to be that there is a difference. Still, you say, go Katator cover. Comes along the Aruch HaShulchan and says, no way. He says, no way. This doesn't make any sense. He says, the only time, he says, they said, this is a very important Aruch HaShulchan, because he's the only ones that really goes into it. He says, the only time we are told of the din, of the concept of tatar gover being what it is when the what's his language there? When the kamuyot, when the quantities are shoving, when they're more or less the same. That's what he wants to say. He says, if you were to have a lot of hot milk coming down on a cold piece of meat, hot, right? It would make the bottom one usher completely. The other way around, right? Or if you have a lot of cold milk coming down on a hot piece of meat, it would be klipa. Klipa, he says, you would need, but it wouldn't be that the little piece of meat in the bottom, hot, would make all of that milk usher. How could you say that? Right? Very interesting Aruch HaShulchan. Now, why would the other ones say that the quantities do not make a difference? Well, not really. The svara is that what's behind the Tatar gover? The Tatar gover does not really imply that the hot in the bottom is heating the top, or the cold in the bottom is cooling off the top. It doesn't imply that necessarily. We never said that. The Tatar gover implies blias and plitas. It does not necessarily mean, we're not talking about here the koach of cooling off or heating the other one because of your position. We're talking about simply about blias. Can there be a blia or a plita in these circumstances? Well, there can be, yeah. There can be a blia or a plita in these circumstances, regardless of the quantities. That's what they say.
Like, when hot meat falls a pot that contains milk.
Right. We're not so much concerned with or implying that the cold milk will cool off the meat.
The question is,
right?
Do I have before me that is Basar בחלב being cooked together? Question?
Well, not really, because it's not complete dish, right?
Let's say I have a hot milk in the pot,
right,
and a cold piece of meat falls into
right,
hot milk.
Yeah.
That's not going to be... We're talking about milk that is with taste.
Yes, it will be. It can be. It can be.
Visual.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reverse situation, have a hot piece of meat into cold milk.
Right. All
Again,
right.
it's a question of children who all say there was no bishul.
Yes. Okay, I see what you're saying. You can come from that angle.
But the average temperature in that pot will be
right,
the same in both cases. Whatever the milk contributes remains the same. Whatever cold the meat contains cold.
Not necessarily. There's a difference between liquids and solids.
I'm not talking about we're going to solve this.
Right.
The cold and the heat should be always the same in solid.
Okay, fine.
We're talking about whether at the bottom or the top. The top has nothing to do with the solid.
Right.
So the either the liquid is hot or cold, and either the meat is hot or cold. One time, whichever is hot is at the bottom. One time, which is cold is at the bottom.
Okay.
When the two together and become mixed together, the average temperature in the same, regardless what heat fell into the or the cold fell into the hot.
Okay, possibly, depending on the quantities mentioned before. That's what Aruch HaShulchan is saying.
I don't understand why you bring the quantities. It's just some quantity of hot fell into some quantity of cold.
Right.
The resulting average temperature of that mixture will be exactly the same as the case where some...
The other way around. The other way around. Okay, fine. Yeah, yes, I understand you now.
But the Tatar gover is not concerned the entire...
That's my point.
Right.
He's concerned about them meat.
No. In my case, that's the two mixing together is where they meet. But that's my point. Call it hot soup with cold milk. Or hot milk with cold soup.
You said that the temperature of the entire mixture.
Right.
And I think the entire...
That's my point. My point is that the Tatar gover has nothing to do with the average temperature of the mixture, even though the average temperature of the mixture will be the same.
Yes.
But the question that is raised here is not the average temperature of the question that is raised here. Does the cold one cool off the hot one, or does the hot one heat up the cold?
Right.
And the answer to that question is formulated in terms of depends which is at the bottom.
That's right. That's correct.
So what they're trying to determine is only, do we look at the hot one as having been cooled off and therefore the mixture is no longer subject to the isser of hot and hot? Or do we look at it as that the cold one has been heated up
Yes.
And therefore we do have the issur of hot and hot. And that is determined by bottom
Yeah.
and top.
Yeah. No. That Eli, you presented it very, very well. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that is correct. That is the ultimate question. That is the machlokes in the Gemara. Which one is the one that does it to the other? Right. And then we pass in that it's tator govar, for whatever reasons we said before the various explanations. And now the question is, will the quantities make a difference? And apparently the Aruch HaShulchan says yes, and others say not necessarily, because we're more concerned about blias and plitas, which is what is produced by tator gavar, and not so much about complete bishul here, or I shouldn't say complete bishul, but completely cooling off the other, or was defeating the other completely. Now this is an important chiluk, because as we will see, we'll leave it for another day, when we get back. This makes a difference in Hilchos Shabbos. You have a little bit of cold tea left in your glass. Can you add hot water to it? Okay? Or you have hot boiling tea. Can you add some cold lemon juice or essence to the hot water? So that we will see is the Gemara of ambati and kos. There's a chiluk in the Gemara between an ambati and Shabbos. A whole bathtub full versus a cup full. So this could make a difference in Hilchos Shabbos much more than here, because in Hilchos Shabbos even Kalipa would be a problem. Bishul here would be Kalipa, Bechilul Shabbos. Whereas of here it may only be a chumrah of sorts, and maybe it wouldn't make that much of a difference. But in Hilchos Shabbos it could be that it would make a difference. And cold and cold, liquid and liquid would be different, as we will see. They are different. Liquids with liquids would be different, halacha, than liquids with salt.
Right, still Shabbos, or we've been Chalav?
Both. Yeah, both.
Lach belach.
Lach belach belach, exactly. Yeah. So that's something that is a very good point that you brought up, that according to the Aruch HaShulchan does make a world of a difference. So some say, guess what? Be machmir all the way, even like the Aruch HaShulchan. What does it mean, even like the Aruch HaShulchan? Since the Aruch HaShulchan says quantities do matter, if the top one is hot, but it's large quantity, you're going to be machmir. We would be mako, because it's on top, not on the bottom. He says, yes, let's go be machmir, and be machmir even like the Aruch HaShulchan, because Aruch HaShulchan really, in reality, in some cases he's mako, but in some cases it would come out of chumrah if the one that's large quantities and it's hot is at the top, and we will see that is a very important chiluk when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos. What are you pouring into what? So we'll leave that, Mr. Hashem, for next time.